I think there's got to be a situation where you've got to draw a line and say, right, okay, you know what, you play with those players that the governments are allowing you to go back and not quarantine. And just simple as that. If it means you put in a really shitty under-21 team, so be it. Exactly like Aston Villa did against Liverpool. Unfortunately, there's nothing else you can do apart from we're in a pandemic. That's the only solution.
Hey guys, and welcome to the world famous Beating the Press podcast, a weekly podcast where we talk about all things football. If that's your type of thing and you're interested, why not subscribe? We've been stuck on around about 72, 73 subscribers for what seems like an eternity. So why not help two young brothers out and get our dream of having 100 subscribers? Like, comments, all the good stuff below. So today we're going to be focusing on comments made by Jurgen Klopp in his press conference about whether players should leave for international duty, especially with everything that's going on with the COVID pandemic at the moment. We're going to discuss that and all the rest next. So if you don't know already, I'm Christian. This is my co-host, Ty. Got a couple of questions for Ty before we start. How are we doing? That's the first one. And the second one, where's your top?
Do you know what? How am I doing? People might think, we're just doing this but we actually only speak to each other when we're on this podcast. So it's not made up, it's just that. And yeah, the top, man. Do you don't even want to know about the top. This is a footballing podcast, but last week, all my white appliances went tits up and I had to buy everything new. So I've just been putting that on so washing machine's up and running now. But I've just literally sorted it to run up here. So don't even dare start with me on tops yet. Apart from that, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Looking forward to Chelsea-Liverpool tonight. Hopefully a good result for the boys, get our season kick-started again. So,
but with 11 games to go. It's a bit late to get it. But yeah, so obviously today, it's a funny one. It came up and me and you obviously spoke about it. And I said, do you know what? I think it'd be good because there's obviously, the reason why clubs aren't wanting for those of you that don't know at the moment, international breaks coming along. Obviously, Premier League's got players from all over the world. Quite a few of those countries are the red list. So they effectively, if they go play for that country, when they come back, they've got to quarantine. But I believe it's 10 days in a hotel. Can't even be involved with their team. So that club would be without their player for 10 days. And in the current fixture list, that could be 3 games. And with it being the business end of the season, it could be 3 fucking massive games. So Jurgen Klopp has now said that there was a conversation had between the Premier League, I think it was last week, and the clubs, and it was basically said, it's clubs, it's your decision, yours and the players' decisions. It takes us back, for those who are old enough to remember when Fergie used to be manager, and every time an international break came up, his players picked up fucking magical injuries, and they we know this. So it was like, Giggs, I think Giggs played about 4 times for Wales in about 4 years. Every
Roy Keane, Vidic.
Yeah, the list is endless. So it came down to that club versus country round. This is effectively, version 2.0 of it, innit? But obviously we've got a pandemic behind it. So we just thought it was really interesting to see why clubs that obviously I think this has shown more than anything else that clubs care about themselves more than the international countries, and it's really interesting to see which way the players' loyalties lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Like you say, it does take you back, and it's a never-ending cycle between like that battle between club and country. You think of recently, you had the Bayern. Bayern seemed to lead the way when it comes to German football. You think of the reasons that they chose not to let Alaba go. I think it was about a few months ago to Austria when he came back from injury. And then you also had the Neuer incident with Ter Stegen, where they were saying that if Ter Stegen plays, then ahead of Neuer, then obviously they wouldn't be sending any more of their players. So it seems like a never-ending struggle. But with COVID, obviously the countries have got to understand that, in reality, the clubs are right in this occasion. You've got three games a week, potentially 4, if you think about it in a 10-day period.
Yeah.
You might have a Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, and then like a Tuesday game. Not to mention the traveling, especially for like the South American players. And then on top of it, you've got a pandemic. it's totally ridiculous for them to expect players to travel that far. And I understand the players, especially like the Brazilians, they'll want to play. They've got Colombia and Argentina, and obviously they'll want to play those games. But at the end of the day, it's unprecedented. So I think Klopp's well within his right, in particularly to hold back his players.
Yeah, and I think we talk about, you talk about the pandemic, but then the second point to that is the injuries. Like Liverpool lost Gomez when he was on England duty, and that wasn't a small. It was literally out for the season. I mean, there's nothing that it's just like you can say it unlucky, which it was, but it's a chance. The club's obviously paying the wages, and they get the final say. And it's not just Klopp. It's Ralph Hasenhüttl said exactly the same. He said, I listened to his interview today, and he was just like, do you know what? It makes no sense for us to send a player and then come back and say, I'm not going to be sending him. And this is and there's a lot of clubs at this season. We spoke about injuries. The last podcast we did was with injuries. With Marwan and stuff. And the importance of rest and all that. There's lots of clubs with loads of injuries. So for them to lose 2 or 3 players because they've got a quarantine for 10 days, it just makes no sense. And you completely get where the clubs are coming from. And again, and then the other side of it is, it's like, why the fuck have you got friendlies? I think they have got some friendlies coming up as well, aren't they? Or they're all competitive matches. No,
they are all competitive matches. I think, like England's games, we've got San Marino, I want to say Azerbaijan, and Poland. For the it might be Albania. Anyway, for the first 2 England games, you can send me and like you and 9 of our mates, and we'll go and play them, and we'll get the result. Don't worry about that. And then Poland will just, we can call it off. But actually, the Poland game, I think that's it's not in a red listed country. Actually, none of them are in red listed countries, so they can technically be played. But what my question is, what makes like football different to everything else? If you think about Jurgen Klopp at the moment, he's going to have Bobby Firmino, Alisson, Fabinho, missing for Brazil, obviously a red-listed country, and Diogo Jota, who's just came back from injury. He's in Portugal, which is obviously another red-listed country. But my point is, Alisson's father recently passed away. Jurgen Klopp's mother recently passed away. They weren't able to travel. Like, there's a travel ban, only essential travel, and they're not able to travel to their own parents' funerals. So what makes football so special that they are exempt?
There's no answer to that, and I completely understand, and I agree with you. It's fucking bonkers. And I know Klopp said something recently. He said it before when he first said, football's the most important thing in the world of the least important things. And you think, and you just think, yep, absolutely, he's correct. And now we think about it, and we think, it just puts stuff into perspective. You know what I mean? There's so many people have lost, families, members, and stuff from COVID. And I just think, just moving on, it's just like, you can't justify clubs allowing players to go for international duty when ultimately you couldn't go and see you bury your mum, bury your dad. Do you know what I mean? I think Klopp's was slightly different because obviously his mum she had COVID, and she was sort of, she had it for a while, whereas Alisson's father was just completely out of the blue, and he obviously drowned in the lake. And yeah, it is just, I think this just shows. I think I know we started the podcast thinking it'll be sort of like a club versus country row. I think this is a lot bigger than that. In normal circumstances, I think you'd probably say, right, who do you want to side with? But I think just in the current climate, I think no red-listed countries, I'd be like, fuck that, no chance, you're not going to play. I don't care if you're going to be a bubble there, you are not going. I think then it just becomes a conversation between the club and the player. And I know South American players are really passionate. This is huge playing for those countries. And some of those games are massive. And it's not just the Brazil-Argentina game, the Brazil-Colombia game, they're big games, the big rivalries. And I know we sort of think, people in England and I'd say Europe as well, just tend to think Brazil, Argentina is like the biggest rivalry. There's some huge rivalries in South America, and then you sort of think some of the African countries as well, And I just think it's just way too big an issue for you to. I think there's got to be a situation where you've got to draw a line and say, right, okay, you know what, you play with those players that the governments are allowing you to go back and not quarantine. And just simple as that. If it means you put in a really shitty under-21 team, so be it. Exactly like Aston Villa did against Liverpool. Unfortunately, there's nothing else you can do apart from we're in a pandemic. That's the only solution. Recently there was this cricket's obviously been going on, and there's a cricket tournament in Pakistan at the moment, which is now been suspended indefinitely because there's about 3 or 4 players in a team who got COVID. So they've got like 6 different teams all in bubbles. They've just binned it. That's it, suspended indefinitely, and basically mean they're going to bin it off. Now, football has been, I think, very lucky, and there's been a lot of rules bent for football. And I'm talking about the time when the cases were really high. The cases were high in the Premier League as well in January, and they still continued. It was all about suspending it. They never did. They powered through it. In Scotland, there's been so many times they broke the rules, yet they'll just give them a slap on the wrist. Nothing's really happened. I think the absolute minimum that should have happened was clubs should have had points deducted and fines. Points deduction, ultimately football clubs only understand points deduction. Fines really don't mean a lot. Do you know what I mean? If they get, as long as they stay up, they're all right. The top flight, who cares? 1 million, 2 million, that doesn't really make a difference. We're going to stay up. So you've got to really hit them with fines, and not just 3-point fines, 10-point fines. So you break the rules, bang, 10-point fine, and that will, they've got to learn. The players they don't realise they live in such a privileged. They've got such a privileged job at the moment, and we talk about essential work. Football isn't essential. We both love football. Football is not essential. And I remember Martin Deroon from Atlanta game. He said that this was just they lost a game. And he tweeted, he's really good on Twitter if you don't follow him, Martin Deroon, he's one of the best ones. And he said, I am in an unbelievably lucky position where I can hug my friends. Do you know what I mean? And he said that. He said, he's got to go, like even in a bubble. And I just think footballers and football have taken this last year for granted, and they don't realise how lucky they are. It's got nothing to do with money. It's being allowed to go do the job they love and still hug their mates, talk to people, don't worry about wearing masks when they're at work. Do you know what I mean? All that sort of thing. So I think the issue's bigger than that.
Yeah, like while we are grateful, obviously, that football's been allowed, we don't know how I would have made it through this period without football. It just drive you crazy. But like you say, that they're so lucky to continue what they're able to do. If those of our 72 subscribers will realise last week we had on a special guest, head of medical services at Leeds Rhino.
Correct,
yeah. I'm going to call him Dr. Marwan. He was absolutely fantastic. Go and see that if you haven't already. And he talked on the effects of long COVID and the lasting effects on people who, young and old. It doesn't matter who you are. Players are not immune. And it's just crazy to think that, they're not taking it as seriously as what they should be. And like you said, they're just taking it for granted. And I think that it should have just been took out of the players' hands completely. Like you say, no player will turn down a game, regardless of what stage of life you are, whether you're on Sunday League or whether you're a top international. You always want to play. You don't want to train, but you always want to play. And, if you think, you mentioned earlier about the South Americans, they absolutely will want to play. There's no doubt that they'll want to play. But it's bigger than them, and you have got to take it out of their hands. Solskjaer mentioned, I think it was yesterday, he's going to speak to his players. And I think if you're speaking to players, all you're going to get is that they want to play. And ultimately, it has to be taken out of their hands.
Yeah, I think the issue is a bit bigger than, and I don't know why they say they're speaking to the players. It doesn't make any sense to me, because I know you want to keep the players happy, but you've got to think club. Do you know what I mean? Man United challenging. I mean, they've won for a few games. Now they're getting dragged into that challenge, that race for the top 4. So they're going to, if they get a couple of their players. I mean, Fernandes, obviously, if he goes, it's like you're fucked, because without Fernandes, the shit at the moment anyway. But so you look at that, you take him out for 10 games. Now that ends up being 3 or 4 games. You don't win those 3 or 4 games. Where do you know what I mean? I just think there's it's got to be a bigger sort of, it's got to be a decision made by, your manager, your CEO, and just gone, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're not going, we're coming blanket ban. If you're a red listed country, unfortunately, you can't go, that is it. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And even the other ones, I'd just be like, stay here, because what you're going to do is you're going to go, right, so say, say, I don't know, for example, for Firmino, Brazil. He goes to Brazil, and he's not going to stay. Is he going to really stay in the bubble, or is he going to go see his mates as well? You
Exactly.
You just don't know, do you? Do you know what I mean? It's hard to.
Would you blame Alisson to go and see his family?
No, that's completely different. And if Alisson doesn't play again for us the rest of the season, I'd have nothing against him. I'd be like, absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what, like, your point. They're not going to stay away from the family. Alisson, you never in a million years could you keep me away from my family. If something like that had happened, and I'm in Brazil, it's not going to happen. If I'm in South America, it's not going to happen. Yeah. You know, you've obviously got priorities, but thinking of way around for the countries that can actually play. Obviously, the likes of England, it looks like their games are going to go ahead. Bruno Fernandes, one that you mentioned there, he's got a home game, and I think he's followed by 2 away games. So it's going to be interesting to see if they find a way to work a way around that, or whether he just doesn't go, or whether the club gets compensated. I was reading an article. I was reading an article about if clubs get compensated by countries for injuries, and I read something along the lines of they pay around about £100,000 a week for 100 weeks if a player gets injured, like up to 100 weeks if a player gets injured. But then right below it mentioned Sean Wright-Phillips as an example. So I think that was around about 10 years ago, that article. So don't quote me on that. So I don't know whether it'll be a case of the countries will be offering them some compensation if the players do miss out, but that's going to be nothing to Man United. Like, there's 100 grand you're without Bruno Fernandes for 4 games.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, it doesn't equate, does it? It just does not add up at all. Just to sort of move on, we've obviously sort of said, you know, club versus country. It'd be really interesting to sort of see what the fans thought of this as well. Do you know what I mean? So we've got a thing now where we have a question for our 72 subscribers. Hopefully more than that as well. We are looking to expand as we are. I mean, you're saying 72, they're good 72. Not that you've been counted or anything. You know?
The best 72. 8 of them are me. 5 of them are you.
5, I think 4, maybe 3. But yeah, no. I mean, we've sort of moved along. You know, we put a question out, and I'll tell you what, the engagement we've had's been really good. So we can continue that. Great. So this week's question is obviously is related to the injuries, and I would like to understand and see where sort of fans would have it. You know, so it's a club versus country row basically. So would you rather have your club win the league, or would you rather have England win the World Cup, or if you support a different country, that country win the World Cup? So answers below under them comments. So, you know, do all that good stuff as well. Like, comment, subscribe, and let us know.
That's an interesting one. I just want to cut. Normally we were going to end it there, but I just want to ask Ty that exact question. So bear in mind, Liverpool won the Premier League last year. Where do your allegiances lie? England/Italy win the World Cup, or Liverpool win the league again?
Oh, it's a horrible one, isn't it?
It is, because we won it last year.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be in question if we hadn't have won it last year.
I don't know. I'd still. Yeah, I get that. It's a really. Yeah, I think it's a tough one for Liverpool, because obviously we can't win it this year. But I know, and I get the question. You know, I'm asking everyone else to answer this question. I'm stumped. I didn't expect you to ask me this.
Well, Ty, put your answer below.
Okay, yeah. I'll go Liverpool in the league.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I would say England to win the World Cup this one time, just because we won that league. But it'd be interesting to see the different levels of answers that people give. I imagine that teams with all due respect, haven't got much to play for, they would go with England. But then again, we've got to take it as if your team, doesn't matter who you are, Burnley, Bournemouth, whatever, you can win the league, the Premier League, the pinnacle, over win the World Cup. Answers down below.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, it's a bye from me, and I guess it's a bye from Chris as well. See you.
See you later.